Official figures released by Kenya's Electoral Commission shows that Deputy President William Ruto had scored a total of 991,413 votes to maintain a slim lead over former Prime Minister Raila Odinga as the ballots are being counted after Tuesday's presidential elections. According to a Kenyan online newspaper, The Nation, that number has given Mr. Ruto, who did not receive the support of his principal, President Uhuru Kenyatta, 51.43% of the counted votes, leaving his main challenger, 77-year-old Odinga, with 924,034 votes, amounting to 47.65%. Joining us now for an update on the ballot counting process, lessons learned so far, and the prospects of peace, security, and transparency of the polls outcome is Samson Itodo, a lawyer, election observer, and a founder of Yaga Africa, which is an NGO with a mission to promote democracy within Africa. Good to have you on the program this afternoon, Samson. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you and good afternoon.
So we have been watching these Kenyan elections quite closely over the past few days. My question to you now is, we know that there's a lot of talks of voter violence, election violence. We were a little bit scared before the elections, but what do you think of the peaceful way things have played out, or seemingly peaceful way things have played out in the elections in Kenya?
Well, the election has come and it's still in the process of being concluded. As you noted, the results are being tallied in different constituencies, and this entire process has been peaceful. The pre-election process, unlike other elections like in 2017, the atmosphere was peaceful, and we must commend, all the actors for their peaceful conduct. It appeared in the build-up to the election and up till this moment that there is a commitment on the part of the political actors here in Kenya to not have a repeat of previous elections that was marred with all forms of violence. So this bipartisan or multi-partisan consensus on peaceful conduct is what's responsible for the peace atmosphere that we have experienced all through this electoral process. Yes, there were, incidents of violence, but they were really statistically insignificant compared to previous elections. So the election has been peaceful, and we commend the people of Kenya for their peaceful conduct, but also the political actors. The two main candidates, the presidential candidates, have maintained decorum in the course of their campaigns. They focused more on issues as opposed to other fault lines that have shaped political competition in Kenya. The process is yet to be concluded. Here in Bomas, where the National Coalition Center, they are still awaiting results from the constituencies. But based on the results, as announced, released by, transmitted from the polling station, so far the Electoral Commission, and that's the Independent Elections and Boundaries Commission of Kenya, is reporting that they've received 98% of results from the 46,222 polling units. They are transmitting results online, but the returning officer, who is the chairman of the IEBC, will have to wait for the returning officers from all the constituencies before declarations can be made. So far, 98% of results have been transmitted electronically, but the announcement has not yet begun at the National Coalition Tallying Center until the hard copies of the results from the 46,000 polling units are brought to the capital here in Nairobi before announcements will be made.
Well, thank you, Samson. Clearly, you wear two hats as a lawyer and election observer, but now I want you to channel your energy on the election observer hat. I'm just wondering, based on how crucial this election was, why was the turnout so low in terms of the electorate compared to what was the case in 2017?
When you speak, to Kenyans in the build-up to the election, there was high confidence in the Electoral Commission. But in the voter registration process, they were really concerned that, yes, whilst the Electoral Commission had targeted or projected to register about 6 million, young people who are of voting age during the last national registration, only 2.5 million young people turned up to be registered. And so one of the, things we're learning is that, perhaps some of the young people thought that their votes were not going to count, or the options presented to them by political parties didn't represent any hope. And so most of them, didn't show up to participate in the process. And so this turnout is either the voters are making two statements, particularly young people, that first, it's about resistance of a status quo. But this status quo really represents for them, the issues around the economy, the issues around social welfare, the issues around jobs. These are concerns that, based on the briefings, pre-election briefings that we received, was a major source of concern, for a lot of people. And they thought that this electoral process and perhaps this election and the candidates do not represent any hope. And so what's the point, coming out, to vote at this election? And so 56% turnout, it's considered very poor. There are polling stations that we went to yesterday, and they recorded very low turnout of voters. And I think that for the Kenyan people, for political actors, for the Electoral Commission, there is need to have deeper reflection on how to mobilize and engage people and make political engagement more meaningful and more interesting. And the only way that can be done is if government continues to provide the promise of democracy, and in this case, it's quality healthcare, adequate and maximum security, high quality education, as well as food on their table, and also, a good and a healthy environment. These are the things that people clamor for. And if they don't connect, governance and their participation in elections with the quality of their life, then they begin to lose faith in the political process. And I hope that the Kenyan people will reflect after this election on how best can they make democracy more interesting and more meaningful for people to participate in the process.
Very well said, Samson. We know that it's being described as a two-horse race, despite the many other candidates in the race, Raila Odinga and William Ruto. We are hearing that he has a little bit of a lead over Raila Odinga, even as the votes are being counted right now, even though we know that Mr. Odinga was pretty much crowned by the current president as his preferred successor to the presidency of Kenya. Well, there's still time for this to change, but what do you make of this neck-and-neck race and the fact that Mr. Ruto is ahead?
Well, again, I think it's important for the public to know that the current results, and I hear you reference The Nation, that result is based on, results from 15,000 polling stations, and there are about 46,000 polling stations. Right. And so, so far, so good. I'd rather wait until the results already computed or tallied reach about 80 or 90% or even 100%. And why is this important? Because it's a two-horse race. It's a highly competitive election, as the results are actually shows. And what that means is every vote, one single vote, can make a difference in this election. And so it's important that all the processes, all the votes are collated, are tallied, because one vote can make a difference in a very competitive race of this nature. And it's not surprising, because in the build-up to the elections, there were several polls that were conducted, and most of the polls actually projected this tight race. And even if lead may be either 1 or 2%. And this is a delicate period, for the Kenyan people. And I must say that, yes, we understand that, yes, it's a tight race. The IEBC is the only institution that is responsible for announcing official results. All the results being projected or being announced at the moment, they are provisional results. I think that we need to urge all the actors, to wait for the Electoral Commission to continue its process of tabulation and tallying. And then when it's prepared to make an announcement, it's got to make an announcement. And I tell you that we're probably going to have to keep watch of this process up till about Friday, or even Saturday, because it's such a long process. There were logistical issues yesterday.
Samson, I'm so sorry. We're running out of time. And thank you for saying logistical issues. And you also mentioned that one single vote could make a difference. There was failure of identification kits in some parts of the country, and that marred a largely peaceful election day in Kenya. How were those who experienced logistical delays, how were they compensated or made to feel like their voice is actually counted in this case? Did they just have to go home feeling a sense of disenfranchisement?
On the point about, the logistical challenge, I say that, yes, in some cases where people they came skit, even though had technical issues, but in those polling stations, the IEBC extended the voting time in those locations. In places where there were insecurity, the election was postponed to today, and I know of a particular constituency where elections are holding today. So far, so good. We've not had reports of where people were denied voting yesterday, because there are procedures where the machine fails to authenticate or accredit a voter, the voter is requested, there's a facial identification or facial verification that is done. The KIMS kit is used to take a photo of the voter with their national ID. And after that, they have to fill in a form, the KIMS verification forms, but they eventually vote at the end of the day. So provisions were made, and time was extended for people to cast their vote yesterday. But, in the build up to the elections, there were last minute or 11th hour judgments issued by the court on the use of manual register. And there were some sort of inconsistencies in the application of this. I think these are issues that Kenyans will have to deal with in the post-election period. But from my observation, we've not heard reports where people were disenfranchised as a result of the failure of the KIMS kits to accredit voters.
Well, very well said. Thank you so much for your analysis and joining us this afternoon, Samson Itodo of Yaga Africa.